Welcome to Lifting the Lid on Technology, a podcast series brought to you by Softsource in association with New Zealand's leading IT vendors and experts. I'm Barry White, VCIO Principal Consultant at Softsource. In this series, we explore opportunities and challenges in the world of IT. And today I'm joined by Aruba's New Zealand Country Manager, Andrew Fox. In part one of this episode, we talk about the networking challenges at the intelligent edge for New Zealand businesses, driving into SD-WAN, cloud-native management and AI. Andrew, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks, Barry.
Really appreciate you joining us today, Andrew.
No, it's great to be here. Thanks.
Tell us a bit about yourself and your role with Aruba. What's your focus this year?
We're a small team of 10 people looking after around about 300 to 400 partners and a few thousand customers around the New Zealand market. I've been with Aruba almost 5 years after many, many years in the IT industry and various roles, but loving it at Aruba. So it's a great change and an amazing company to work for. I was attracted to Aruba. You know, it's one of those beautiful startup stories that you see in the press. Silicon Valley unicorn, sort of founded in 2002, sort of IPO'd in 2007. And purchased by Hewlett-Packard back then, now Hewlett-Packard Enterprise, but purchased in 2015. So it's been really cool to watch Hewlett-Packard Enterprise take a small startup and try and build it into HPE without breaking what's cool about Aruba. And I think they've done a great job. So it's good fun to be part of the team.
Yeah, no, it seems like a real fun company. You know, it's often, networking's not seen as a fun thing necessarily, but it does have that kind of almost Apple-ish sort of fun brand thing going on.
Well, it's, everyone needs networking. That's a great thing. If you're going to work with customers and sell solutions, better to sell something that every single customer needs in one form or another. So that's quite cool. But also they've worked really hard to maintain that sort of biggest small company feeling and worked really hard to maintain what made Aruba special, this maniacal focus on customers and our main sort of vision is customer first, customer last. That's this focus on doing what people need.
So, on that issue, I think Aruba's seen some really rapid growth, I guess, and based on industry reports anyway. The networking division has seen a sort of significant growth in 2020, up sort of 12% on previous years. From a layman's point of view, that kind of suggests that networking's been a significant challenge during the last 12 months for obvious reasons. Has that been your experience? People changing the way they think about networking in the wake of COVID-19? Or
I think what COVID has done is put a spotlight on the kinds of things you could do with your network if it was set up correctly. So, suddenly we all found ourselves at home. And in my case, in my garage, it was the quietest space of the house. What Aruba did really well, it's probably about 10 years ago. It was a part of our original product solution, but we have this concept called a remote access point, and it means that I can have a Aruba access point in my house and I can plug that into the wall and it will tunnel securely back to Aruba and then present all the corporate wireless and SSIDs and things in my garage, in my case. And so as far as I know, I'm sitting on the network in the office, although I'm not. So from a security perspective, I'm completely secure in all the normal sort of corporate security things. Obviously, having people working all over the place is a little bit of a nightmare potentially from a security perspective, so it's great to have that under control. But also I have all the visibility and control and management that I would have in an enterprise network, but sitting in my house. And I think that has been one of the drivers for an amazing growth globally over the last 12 months.
Seen in your sort of marketing literature many references to unified infrastructure where, sort of changing work styles, pushing the need to process and analyze data beyond the sort of traditional data center. Do you want to kind of just talk to that a little bit, and maybe even for those listening who perhaps have heard this term about edge computing and perhaps don't really know what it means, maybe just talk to that from a networking standpoint.
The concept of the edge, as we talk about it, and it's become a bit of an industry buzzword now, that's not a new concept. So the edge is where people live or work or play or where they interact, where the physical interacts with the digital.
Sounds like client computing to me.
It kind of is, but the difference nowadays is the amount of data and the amount of decisions that need to be made A great example is that I love to use is a customer of ours, which is Auckland Transport. They've got cameras at just about every intersection in Auckland. And if you think about the challenges of piping all of those streams of video back to a central point and making some decisions based on what you see on those cameras and then performing some sort of action, if you try and do that in real time, you're doomed to failure. There is just so much data coming from so many places that the place to be making those kinds of decisions and trying to mine insights based on that data, that's actually at the edge. Edge computing is just about moving the compute from the data center where we've known and loved it for many years, or the cloud, which is just someone else's data center for this particular discussion, but moving it out towards the edge where these things are happening. And the concept is, if you see some data at the edge, could be anything, could be a IoT data feed from a temperature sensor, could be a camera, could be anything. But the idea is, see the data and make some sort of decision right there at the edge, and then do it. And if the data is not anything special, don't bother sending it back. Just discard it. It's not necessary or needed. And if you look at the petabytes of data that are being created every day, in a normal sort of enterprise, that becomes a considerable problem from shifting it all and storing it all. So edge computing is just around making better decisions at the edge.
So if we were to look at that from a kind of a New Zealand perspective, and we see all the numbers coming out of North America, and again, I'm just basing this on industry numbers that in 2020 there was approximately 50 million devices connected to the internet, which was up from 42 million the previous year. Looking forward, people are saying these numbers are going to go through the roof.
Isn't it 50 billion now? It's massive numbers. I know that even at Aruba, we've got 5 million devices connected now and managed under Aruba Central just on our cloud platform. So that explosion will completely continue if you look at the things that we're talking about now. In your house, I guarantee there'll be somewhere between 20 and 50 connected devices. And mine, there's about 35 at any given day. But that's everything from vacuum cleaners to laptops to phones to fridges in some cases, TVs, Chromecast, Apple TVs, you name it. And so if you multiply that, at an enterprise, every camera, every sensor, every car, every in some cases we've got roads that are being instrumented, with intelligence and the ability to communicate the condition of the road and things like that. If you, it's not hard to imagine that we can get up, billions and billions and billions of devices, which is a challenge for the 20th century model of network management that many of our customers are still using. We're helping them out of that. But it's a real challenge to manage an explosion of devices and data like that.
Are we going to see the same impact in New Zealand, or because we're such a small country, perhaps not?
I think we will, because as Kiwis, we're quite up for trying something new. Yeah. We don't mind taking a risk and doing something differently if we think that the outcome justifies the risk.
Yeah.
So, in New Zealand, we have customers that are doing some non-traditional things in the IoT space, for example, and are trying things as a bit of a test bed for their overseas operations in some cases. So I think, yes, we'll see it here. We won't see the scale, but we'll still see the technological management, security, visibility challenges.
So if we were to look at that from a customer perspective, where do you think we are on that journey now?
I think we're further ahead than some parts of the world. I'm hearing that in some parts of Europe, they're pushing harder than us. Maybe that's because they've got more points of presence in the major cloud providers that are close to them. Ours normally are in Australia, of course. But if I look as an indicator, maybe the Aruba portfolio now is managed mostly in the cloud for new customers. So all of the conversations we have, that's not because it has to be, but it's because the customers are saying, hey, sell me, Andrew, a solution to my network challenges that I can manage from the cloud. And almost 100% of conversations now have that element inside them. So that makes me reasonably unique around the region. Everyone else, the would you like to manage it with cloud is a bit of an afterthought. Here it is actually, pulling the business. So that tells me the Kiwis are a little bit ahead in this space.
Perhaps you could just talk a little bit to the subject about, this kind of transition from traditional networking to SD-WAN and why that's important in relation to what we're just talking about in terms of cloud migration and how Aruba thinks about that.
It's really, really important and really exciting, by the way. I think this is really, it's an amazing thing that's happened. But once upon a time, the network was a reasonably simple thing at a high level. You created an enterprise, you put wired networking through it in the beginning, and then you added wireless later. But ultimately, you put a big box around that enterprise and you secured it with your firewalls or whatever it was. And your focus was on keeping the bad guys outside from getting inside. And that was an extremely good model, which lasted us for many, many years. And you and I have both been, in that mode.
Defend the DMZ, right?
Correct. Everyone who was on the network was inside. And that was kind of easy. But then as businesses changed and we as humans changed and lifestyles changed and working models have changed and then, all these other things like we talked about before, now, everyone's not on the inside of the organization. That's the first big change. Secondly, all the devices we're using, they're not traditional corporate devices like PCs with standard images and all those things that once upon a time we would have had. They're iPhones, they're Apple Watches, they're iPads, they're Android devices, plethora of devices which we as users demand access to corporate resources on to do our jobs. And smart employers, and it took some employers a long time. There's still customers that I have that don't issue laptops to their employees. They want them to come into the office and use desktops, and I think that hopefully will disappear soon. But the smart employer figures out that whatever's going to help you be most productive as an employee, that's the device you put in front of them. And if it happens to be their own iPhone from home, even better because I don't have to buy it. So set up easy to onboard, secure connectivity that goes very quickly and, gets the business done fast. That became the focus. And as these explosion of devices came, the old sort of very static, manually configured model of networking, that didn't scale very well. So networking teams all around the world, had brain explosions trying to figure out how to manage the complexity that had been introduced. So, what that led to, first it led to, the traditional network management tools, usually on-premise, where your network administrators could manage and monitor your network. That was cool, but managed primarily from the network out. What the average company needs now, though, is a view from the user back in. So what does it really feel like right now for Barry to use this network? And it was those kind of questions which gave rise to this cloud platform explosion. Aruba has what we call our edge services platform. It's the platform in which you can manage everything. The focus on that platform is what it feels like to use the network. So what sort of experience is Barry's laptop having right at the moment? Are there any issues we need to look at? That was the first step. And we've been doing that now for around about 10 years from a cloud management perspective. And then the world changed again. Suddenly the availability of technologies like AI, which is a big part of the edge services platform conversation. I'm sure we'll get to that. But yep. AI is exciting because, with 5 million connected devices under management, what you can then do with that massive pool of data is you can mine that for insights. And based on what we're seeing with Barry's laptop right now, we've seen that same thing with these other 1,000 devices, and it was fixed by doing this. And AI can do that way faster than you or I as humans can, and suggest a way to fix that, or in the future, automatically fix that. And so we're getting to a network which becomes, self-healing, if you like, almost this concept of a sixth sense we talk about, where, ESP is a bit of a play on words, but a network that is sort of constantly adapting and tuning itself and trying to make things better for the users that use it.
that term, the sixth sense for your network, that one sort of jumped out at me when I was on the Aruba website. And of course, not everybody listened to this may be old enough to remember that movie, but I think it was. I thought that was I really liked the way that was kind of phrased. I thought it was a really great marketing term. It was a good lead into my next question, which was, and again, I'm sort of throwing these terms out there just so that you can kind of be the babble fish for people who read these marketing terms and go, well, that sounds very impressive, but what does it actually mean? So Aruba uses this term cloud native management, and I guess you've kind of touched on a couple of those things. But do you just kind of want to talk to that a little bit more in terms of some of the decisions that IT management can make around whether they choose to manage using controllers on premise versus using a cloud management platform?
It is not always about the cloud. Aruba has a unique philosophy that says, when you buy a product from us, you can manage that how you wish to manage that. So let's use an example. If you buy an access point for your wireless infrastructure, you can manage that in the cloud if you wish and pay a subscription to manage that. If you decide or choose not to manage it in the cloud, you can manage it yourself on premise with a traditional network management tool such as Aruba Airwave or anything else. Traditional SNMP management and stuff like that. Or if you wish, you can manage that in a browser. That's your choice. You bought the access point. You can manage it how you will. It gives customers a lot of flexibility based on where they are in their journey, right? So a lot of our customers start off managing on-premise and then migrate into the cloud. Maybe the on-premise management system's been there for a few years. That's not the thing we want to move right now. We'll refresh their infrastructure and we'll transition the management later. Or maybe they're not sure whether they want to manage it in the cloud just yet. Maybe we can manage it out of a browser and then they lose a couple of members of their network team and suddenly actually a single pane of glass becomes a very attractive proposition for a network team. That's really similarly, if you purchase a switch or an access point, it will come fully unlocked and fully licensed. There's no games around golden screwdrivers and, this port's 1 gig, you pay this money, it becomes a 10 gig port, that kind of stuff, which in the industry does happen. We're trying to make things really, really easy. The cloud native thing you mentioned, we had a fantastic opportunity. We're one of the few organizations in the industry that still makes our own ASICs. And so we had the fantastic opportunity, it was about 3 or 4 years ago now, to redesign our switching platform from the ground up and to completely rebuild the operating system that our switches run on. And we built that based on the same principles that you build a cloud application today. So, it's built on a database, time series database. It's built with microservices and all of the things that you expect from a cloud application. And what that means is, it means a few things. It means that, if you want to make changes to the software that's running in a switch, you're, affecting a very small piece. It can be done on the fly. You don't have to completely erase and restart and go again. It also means, in the previous generation of switches, everything was done through the CLI by your network team. In later years, we exposed APIs for some of that functionality, not all of it. Probably 70% is available in the API. By contrast, the new switching, it's API first. So 100% of the functionality of the switch is available via the API. In fact, the CLI comes later. You know what I mean? So there's a bit of a sort of a change to make things easy to secure and easy to automate.
So for IT professionals, is that suggesting, as it has done in cloud, cloud technologies in general, is that changing the skill set out there? Are people having to learn different skills now? And is some of the administration becoming more democratized, I guess is what I'm asking. And therefore, if I was a network engineer or training to be a network engineer, are there different skills that I need to be learning now?
Firstly, clever network people are still clever network people, and you still need, fortunately for me and for the rest of our team, you still need clever network people. What it does mean is skills. What's a good example? Around automation. If you're thinking about automation and API integration, that's an area that We never had to learn once upon a time. I've got members of my team who are looking at Ansible and Python and technologies like that are tremendously powerful from an automation and a management perspective. But you never would have had to learn those once upon a time. It was all about learning. Well, when I first started, it was all about learning Cisco, iOS, and that was kind of it. But you had to learn about networks and VLANs and how to stitch together a decent network, and that was all. I think it's a good thing, by the way, because I think the opportunity to develop your skills and expand as a professional and add those certifications and skills to your CV is a really powerful thing. Most of the network professionals that I talk to, they don't want to be hands-on on the CLI doing individual changes to ports. That's something that they're quite happy to automate and have done from a central point.
It's like Linux administrators, they're over it, right? They've just, or software developers, they just don't want to do that stuff anymore.
No, they want to be either making the decisions at the central point around policy and around how the network functions, which of course today is all done at one point, but they want to be making the high-value decisions. How do we architect this? How do we architect this for security? How do we architect it for performance? You can't outsource that to AI yet.
Again, you kind of touched on it with the sixth sense, but this whole idea of AI ops, I get a lot of customers talking to me about that now, largely in academic terms rather than practical terms. But if we were to kind of contextualize that for New Zealand organisations, what are the real benefits of some of this new technology from an Aruba standpoint, and what sort of benefits can customers expect from AI ops? Would they expect their network just to work better? Would they expect it to be more reliable? Is it going to lower cost? Does it reduce complexity? I mean, am I summarising? Am I taking the words out of your mouth?
No. So what it means, typically, it's really relevant to Kiwis because typically, we don't have an IT shop here, with some exceptions of, 150 people. We generally have a smaller team of people. We are very efficient, most of our companies, in terms of how many people they've got on the team. So anything that can help that team go faster, fix problems quicker, is a good thing. The network has become so complex. If you think about your average network problem, let's make something up. So I've got a branch of retail stores and one of my switches in a remote branch is misconfigured. Maybe there's a VLAN missing or something like that. That's a reasonably common scenario. Sorry for the technical jargon, but to find that can be hard. There's only one way to find that if you're human, that is to basically check them one by one and, series of tests, and that can take an awful long time to troubleshoot. And that's time that then can't be spent on higher value functions. So anything at all that can help to automatically detect and expose that problem and offer a solution to that problem without a human actually burning a day on it, that is a beautiful thing for a New Zealand company, right? And as the pool of data, the telemetry we're getting out of these networks becomes bigger and bigger, the things we can do with that become way more powerful. So another great example that we get a lot is we do anonymized peer comparisons. So we know that your organization right now has, 2 gateways, has 6 switches and 12 APs. And we can compare you loosely and anonymized with the same sort of organization somewhere else in the world, and we can see how theirs is performing versus how yours is performing. If the experience that their users are getting is better than the experience that your users are getting, what's different? Now, you and I could do that. It would take us a week, and a lot of coffee, and we might come up with
Google searches.
Yeah, correct. We might, and a lot of Google searches, a lot of Stack Exchange, a lot of this kind of stuff. We would potentially come up with an answer. The thing about the AI, it can do that way faster, and come up and say, Barry, if you reduce your transmit power on the 2.4 gig radio from X to Y, your users will have a better experience. Now, we might have arrived at that, but it arrived at that, instantly, and was sitting there waiting for you in the morning with a suggestion of something you could do to improve it. Now, that, for an IT manager, that is a really, really cool thing.
Thank you for joining us as we explored SD-WAN, native cloud management and AI with Andrew Fox from Aruba. Don't forget to tune in for part 2 of this episode, where we'll continue our discussion with Andrew around networking challenges at the intelligent edge for New Zealand businesses and dive deeper into working from home, privacy and security in Aruba's ESP solution.